Right now, somewhere in the world, a bird is landing on a hand that could crush it. A dog is falling asleep with its throat exposed to something that hunts better than anything it's ever met. We tell ourselves animals trust us because we're kind to them. That's not it. We are the single deadliest thing to ever walk this planet. We've driven more species extinct than every ice age combined, and somehow a horse still lets a person climb onto its back. That doesn't make sense. Unless the trust was never really a gift. Unless it was something we built. So let's start at the beginning. And the beginning is a wolf. Somewhere between 40 and 15,000 years ago, wolves started showing up at the edges of human camps, not attacking, just watching. There were bones there, scraps, marrow left in the joints that nobody bothered with. Free calories. But there was a problem. To get to that food, a wolf had to do the one thing every instinct in its body screamed against. It had to walk toward the fire. Most wolves couldn't. The fear response is not optional in a wild animal. It fires before thought. But a small minority had a slightly shorter fuse on that response. They could get closer before the panic hit, and that tiny difference in one hormonal threshold is where everything starts. Those wolves ate better. They had more pups. Their pups inherited the same shorter fuse. Repeat that for a few hundred generations, and you don't get a tamer wolf. You get a different animal. Here's the part that gets missed. We didn't domesticate them. Not at first. There was no ancient human who decided to adopt a wolf. The wolves selected themselves, and the trait they selected for was tolerance of us. The first dog was not something we made. It was something that happened to us. The problem is that this whole story was an educated guess for a very long time. Nobody had watched it occur, until a Soviet geneticist decided to run it again from scratch. In 1959, a scientist named Dmitry Belyaev started an experiment at a fur farm in Siberia. He took silver foxes, wild ones, animals that would bite through a glove, and he bred them using exactly one rule. He would approach each fox. Whichever ones let him get closest without snapping or fleeing were allowed to reproduce. That was the entire selection criteria. Not intelligence, not size, not color. Just how close can I get? He did not select for floppy ears. He did not select for curly tail or spotted coats or shorter snouts or a longer window of puppy-like behavior into adulthood. He got all of them anyway. Within about 10 generations, foxes were wagging their tails at humans. Within 40, they were whimpering for attention, licking hands and seeking out contact like dogs. And physically, they had drifted. Ears softened, skulls shortened, coats broke into patches of white. Something in the recipe for building a fox had been altered by pulling a single lever. That lever appears to be a group of embryonic cells called the neural crest. These cells migrate through a developing embryo and become several unrelated things. The adrenal glands that produce the fear response, the cartilage in the ears, the pigment cells in the skin, part of the jaw. Select for a weaker fear response, and you're selecting for slightly fewer of these cells arriving on time. And the ears, the color, the face, all of it comes along whether you wanted it or not. So here's what that actually means. Tameness is not a behavior an animal learned. It is a developmental state. Domesticated animals are, in a real sense, animals that never fully finish becoming wild. They stay in a juvenile window their whole lives. Puppy behavior in an adult body. A permanent childhood engineered by us, and that comes at a cost. Domesticated dogs have brains roughly 25% smaller than wolves of the same body size. Domesticated animals show reduced problem solving in the wild, weakened stress responses, dulled senses. Trust is not free. We traded them a guaranteed meal for a piece of their own competence, and both sides signed. That accounts for maybe 40 species. Out of all of them, every dog, every horse, every cow, every chicken on Earth came from that same narrow bottleneck of animals with an unusually short fuse. But it does not explain everything, because there is a second category, and this one is stranger. Nobody bred the crows. In cities across the world, wild crows recognize individual human faces, hold grudges against specific people for years, and teach those grudges to birds that were never there. In Seattle, researchers wearing a particular mask were mobbed by crows that had not even hatched during the original event. The information had been passed on, and it runs the other way too. Crows have been documented leaving objects for humans who feed them. Bolts, beads, bits of glass, single earring. Nobody selected for that. There are stranger cases. Off the coast of Brazil, in a town called Laguna, wild bottlenose dolphins herd fish toward local fishermen, then signal with a sharp dive when the net should be thrown. The dolphins get the scattered fish. The fishermen get the catch. This has been going on for over 150 years, and the dolphins teach it to their own calves. Two species maintaining a working partnership across generations, and neither one is captive. None of these animals had their fear response bred out of them. They are fully wild, fully capable of leaving. They approached anyway, which means the domestication story is only half the answer. Here's what the other half looks like. Trust in an animal is not an emotion. It's a calculation. Every animal is constantly running the same equation. What does this thing cost me, and what does it give me? Fear is just the default setting for an unknown. When the same unknown shows up repeatedly and nothing bad happens, the calculation updates. Not because the animal likes you, because the prediction is holding. And humans are an unusually good bet. Once you clear the initial risk, we generate enormous amounts of waste food. We build heat. We kill the things that hunt them. We are, from the outside, an extremely reliable resource that occasionally kills you. For a species with a shorter fuse or a longer memory, that math can come out positive. Which brings us to the uncomfortable part. A system that can be calculated can be exploited. We have used that trust deliberately for most of our history. The pigeon that carried military messages was raised to trust a handler. The horse that carried men into gunfire had its panic response overridden by training built on that same trust. Every trained elephant, every laboratory animal, every animal that walked calmly into a place it should never have walked into, went there because the prediction held right up until the moment it didn't. And the animals that trusted us most completely were often the ones we harmed most efficiently. The dodo had no fear of humans at all. It had never needed one. That's precisely why it's gone. So why do animals trust us at all? Because some of them were built to. We spent thousands of years selecting for the ones that could come close, and in the process we rewired their fear, their skulls, their coats, and their brains, and we called the result loyalty, and because the rest of them ran the numbers. A crow, a dolphin, a fox on the edge of a city looks at the most dangerous animal on Earth and calculates that the payoff is worth the risk. That is not affection. It is something colder and, honestly, more impressive. It's a wild animal making a bet. Go back to that bird landing on an open hand. Nothing about that is safe. Every ancestor that bird has ever had would tell it not to. It lands anyway because somewhere in its head the math came out in our favor, and it is trusting us to be what we've been so far. That's what animals are actually giving us. Not love. A prediction, and we get to decide every time whether we keep proving it right. So here's the question I'd actually like answered. Is your pet's trust something you earned or something you inherited? Tell me in the comments, because I don't think there's a clean answer to that one. Also, there's a silver fox hidden somewhere in this video that was never part of Belyaev's experiment. If you spotted it, drop the timestamp below. One random person who gets it right, I'll announce the winner in the next video. And every study I mentioned, the fox farm, the crow masks, the dolphins in Laguna, all of it is linked in the description if you want to go deeper. Thanks for watching.